But today, examples of it are whispered about in auction rooms for $1 million. A single penny. Brown. Ordinary. Forgotten. And yet, it carries a secret that has turned everyday people into legends overnight. The year was 1960. America was changing fast. New presidents. New dreams. And at the Denver Mint, millions of Lincoln pennies were being struck every single day. Most were perfectly normal. But late one shift, something went wrong. Subtle. Silent. Invisible to the naked eye at first glance. A tiny mistake slipped through quality control, and the coin world would pay the price decades later. At first, no one noticed. These pennies circulated like any other. They bought coffee. They sat in ashtrays. They rattled around in glove compartments. Some were lost forever. Others were spent without a second thought. But a handful survived, and those survivors would one day shock the entire numismatic world, because hidden within some 1960 pennies is a minting error so rare that even seasoned collectors missed it for years. And when one finally surfaced, the reaction was instant disbelief. Collectors were stunned. Dealers leaned in closer. Magnifying glasses came out. And suddenly, a coin worth 1 cent was no longer just a penny. It was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. A sharp-eyed collector noticed something strange. The details weren't quite right. The numbers and the date looked off. The lettering had a ghostly doubling. At first, experts argued. Some said damage. Others said coincidence. But deeper analysis revealed the truth. This was no accident after circulation. This was a genuine mint error, struck at the Denver Mint in 1960 and released into the wild. Collectors began tearing through old rolls. Bank vaults were searched. Inherited coin jars were reopened. People who had ignored pennies their entire lives suddenly couldn't stop looking at them. The rarest 1960 Lincoln pennies show dramatic double die features, especially in the date and the word Liberty. The doubling isn't subtle when you know what to look for. It's bold. It's unmistakable. And it proves that the coin was struck from a misaligned die at the mint itself, not damaged later. One particular specimen, preserved in near-perfect condition, sent shockwaves through the market when it appeared at a private sale. Collectors watched in disbelief as the price climbed higher and higher, until it crossed into territory no one expected from a modern-era penny. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Auction houses are quietly searching for more. And longtime collectors admit something they never thought they would say: they're checking their pocket change again. Because this isn't ancient gold. This isn't a medieval artifact. This is a penny that looks almost identical to millions of others. He wasn't a professional collector. He wasn't hunting for treasure. He was sorting through old coins inherited from a relative, ready to cash them in at the bank. At the last second, he hesitated. Something about one penny felt different. He noticed the date. 1960, a small D mint mark below it. And then, the doubling. This wasn't just rare. This was elite. This was the kind of coin museums dream about. The kind collectors wait their entire lives to see once. And suddenly it belonged to an ordinary person who almost let it go for face value. Millions of 1960 pennies still exist. Many are sitting in jars, drawers, boxes, and forgotten envelopes. And while only a tiny fraction carry the error that drives prices into the $1 million range, the possibility is real. Tangible. Close enough to touch. As prices climbed, counterfeits appeared. Altered coins flooded the market. People tried to fake the doubling, scratching and reshaping numbers. And suddenly, identifying the real thing became more important than ever. To identify the true 1960 penny that collectors dream of, you must start with the mint mark. A small D, just below the date, struck cleanly into the coin, not added later. Then examine the date itself. Look closely at the numbers. True doubled die shows strong separation, not flat shadows or machine doubling. The doubling should look raised, like a second image, especially on the 1 and 9. Next, inspect the word Liberty. On genuine high-value examples, the letters show clear doubling, sharp and bold, not worn or smeared. The texture of the coin should feel original, not polished or altered. Any sign of filing, smoothing, or unnatural shine can destroy value instantly. A worn example may be valuable, but a high-grade, untouched specimen is what pushes prices into legendary territory. Clean surfaces, sharp details, original color. These are the factors that separate a few $1,000s from $1 million. Collectors were shocked when they realized how many had overlooked this coin in the past. How many were spent. How many were lost. And how few remain in top condition. Because this isn't just about money. It's about the idea that history, rarity, and fate can collide in the smallest places. That something dismissed as worthless can secretly hold life-changing value. Every time a penny hits the ground, someone bends down to pick it up now. Every old jar gets a second look. Every inherited collection becomes a mystery waiting to be solved. But one single detail turned it into a sale that stunned collectors and crossed $1 million. Picture this for a moment. A tired man emptying his pockets at the end of a long day. Loose change, lint, a few pennies scratched and dark from decades of use. Nothing special. Or so he thought. One of those pennies was a 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin so ordinary looking that millions of Americans have held it without a second glance. But this one was different. And that difference would change a life forever. At first glance, the 1941 Lincoln penny feels boring. No silver shine. No rare date screaming value. Just Abraham Lincoln staring calmly to the right, the wheat ears on the back whispering of another era. During World War II, America was preparing for global chaos, and the U.S. Mint was striking coins at a frantic pace. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco. Machines running non-stop, pressure mounting, mistakes slipping through. Because while most 1941 pennies are worth just a few cents, a microscopic group of them were struck under conditions so unusual, so flawed, that collectors today consider them near mythical. For decades, experts believed these coins didn't exist at all. Then one surfaced. And the coin world froze. Collectors were shocked. Dealers leaned in closer. Auction houses went silent as the bidding climbed higher and higher, until it crossed $1 million. The penny wasn't shiny. It wasn't polished. In fact, it looked almost ugly to the untrained eye. But under magnification, something was terribly wrong, or incredibly right, depending on how you look at it. The metal composition was inconsistent. The strike pressure was uneven. And most importantly, the coin showed evidence of a rare transitional minting error tied to experimental planchets and wartime preparation. In 1941, the U.S. Mint was already experimenting behind closed doors. Copper supplies were being monitored. Alternative metals were discussed. Test blanks were produced in extremely small numbers, never intended for circulation. But a few slipped through. And when they did, they were struck with regular 1941 dies, no mint mark, because Philadelphia didn't use 1.1. Collector recalled the moment he realized what he was holding. He had owned the penny for years, sitting in a small envelope labeled Old Wheat Cents. No fanfare. No protection. One rainy afternoon, curiosity struck. He sent it for professional grading, more out of boredom than hope. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, not because it's flashy, but because it represents something collectors crave more than beauty, a once-in-a-generation mistake. A moment when history, pressure, metal, and human error collided, because back then, quality control wasn't perfect. Coins were dumped into bags by the thousands. Nobody checked weight with precision. Nobody imagined that 80 years later, collectors would pay $1 million for a single cent. Another 1941 no-mint mark penny surfaced years later, this time from an estate sale. The owner had passed away without ever knowing what he had. The penny was found mixed in with foreign coins and arcade tokens. Dirty. Dark. Forgotten. When it hit auction, the bidding war was vicious. Seasoned collectors competed like gamblers at a final table. The room was silent except for numbers climbing higher than anyone expected. Now here's where the story turns personal, because this isn't just about history or auctions. This is about what might be sitting in your home right now. First, the date must read 1941. Not 1940. Not 1942. Exactly 1941. Second, there must be no mint mark under the date. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Third, and this is where most people fail, the coin must be weighed precisely. Even a tiny difference in weight can mean everything. These rare versions often weigh slightly off from the standard copper penny. Look closely at the surface. Uneven texture. Weak strikes. Areas where the metal seems wrong, softer, grainier, almost unfinished. These are not damage. These are clues. Another cliffhanger that changed everything. A third specimen was rumored, but never confirmed. Some believe it's still out there, hiding in plain sight, passed from hand to hand for decades. Avoid common mistakes. Don't clean the coin. Don't polish it. Don't scratch it to test it. That alone can destroy hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Always have it professionally evaluated. Always trust weight, metal analysis, and expert grading over internet guesses. Collectors still talk about the day that first 1941 no mint mark penny crossed the auction block. Some say it changed the market forever. Others say it proved that America's greatest treasures aren't locked in museums. They're hiding in drawers, jars, and pockets. But instead, it shocked the entire coin world and climbed toward a value of $1.1 million. A single Lincoln penny. No mint mark. Dated 1976. The kind of coin millions of Americans have held, spent, and forgotten, without realizing they might have been holding a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. Imagine this. A man cleaning out an old jar of pocket change, the kind that's been sitting untouched for decades. Pennies, nickels, dust, memories. Nothing special. Or so he thought. One dull brown penny catches his eye. Not because it's shiny, but because something feels off. No mint mark. A strange texture. A weight that doesn't quite match. He almost tosses it back. Almost. And that single hesitation changed everything. 1976 was supposed to be an ordinary year for pennies. Millions were struck. Billions circulated. Nothing rare. Nothing special. Or at least, that's what people believed for decades. But behind closed mint doors, small mistakes happened. Metal planchets left over from earlier years. Pressures misaligned. Dies worn down just enough to create coins that were never meant to exist. No mint mark means this penny was struck in Philadelphia, the busiest mint in the nation. And that's exactly where mistakes can slip through unnoticed. In 1976, while the country was celebrating its bicentennial, the mint was under intense pressure to produce coins fast. Corners were cut. Quality control slipped. And a handful of pennies were born wrong. This 1976 no mint mark Lincoln penny wasn't just old. It wasn't just clean. It had a combination of ultra-rare errors that should never appear together. Wrong metal composition. Anomalous weight. Microscopic doubling in Lincoln's profile. A faint but unmistakable die error on the date itself. Experts stared at it under magnification, silent. Then one of them said the words every collector dreams of hearing. When the coin went to auction, bidding started slow. A few $1,000s. Then 10,000. Then collectors realized what they were seeing. Phones lit up. Dealers jumped in. The room grew tense. Every bid pushed the price higher, faster. 50,000. 100,000. $500,000. Gasps filled the room. By the end, the hammer fell near $1 million, and suddenly, every 1976 penny in America was being looked at differently. Because here's the secret most people miss. It's not just about the date. It's not just about condition. It's about tiny details hiding in plain sight, details so small that most people spend these pennies without ever noticing. First, the metal. A standard 1976 penny should be copper-plated zinc. But the rare versions may be struck on the wrong planchet, sometimes leftover bronze blanks from earlier years. The weight difference is subtle, but critical. One wrong gram can mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Then there's the strike itself. Look closely at Lincoln's face. On the rare examples, there may be slight doubling in the lettering or profile. Not the obvious kind, The kind you need light, angle, and patience to see. The kind that rewards people who slow down. Because unlike ancient coins locked in vaults, these were released into circulation. They bought coffee. They paid tolls. They sat in drawers. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and nobody noticed for decades. Another example surfaced. Different owner. Different state. Same core traits. Verified. Authenticated. Suddenly, this wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. A tiny batch of coins that slipped through history, hiding in plain sight while the world moved on. People started checking jars. Inherited collections. Old piggy banks. Dealers couldn't keep up with submissions. Most coins, of course, were ordinary. But every once in a while, something strange appeared. And every strange coin reignited the dream. Life-changing discoveries don't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes, they look exactly like the smallest thing you'd never think to question. Start with the basics. The date must read 1976. There must be no mint mark under the date, none at all. Then check the weight. A digital scale can reveal whether it matches standard copper-plated zinc, or something very different. Next, study the surface. Look for unusual texture. Weak strikes. Doubling in the letters of liberty, or I in God we trust. Pay close attention to Lincoln's profile, especially the edges of his face and coat. Cleaning destroys value. Even wiping it lightly can erase microscopic clues that prove authenticity. Many potential $1 million coins have been ruined by good intentions. If you suspect something unusual, stop. Protect it. Get it professionally evaluated. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary often lives in details smaller than a grain of sand. Collectors still talk about the first discovery like a legend. A penny no one wanted. A coin nobody cared about. Until it rewrote what was possible. But it stunned collectors when whispers began that it could be worth over $1 million. Picture this for a moment. A regular morning. Loose change dumped on a kitchen table. Coffee still hot. And right there, mixed in with nickels and dimes, sat a completely ordinary-looking 2006 Lincoln penny. Copper-colored. Worn. Forgettable. Or so it seemed. No one watching that moment could have imagined this tiny coin would ignite one of the most intense modern penny hunts in U.S. history. Because the truth is, some of the most valuable coins ever discovered didn't come from vaults or museums. They came from pockets. From jars. From couch cushions. And this 2006 mint mark Lincoln penny is wrapped in exactly that kind of mystery. At first glance, there's nothing flashy about it. No gold shine. No silver glow. Just Abraham Lincoln staring forward like he has for decades. Millions of these pennies were struck at the Denver Mint in 2006. Millions were spent. Millions were lost. But buried among them, a microscopic mistake changed everything. In the mid-2000s, the U.S. Mint was producing coins at massive speed. Machines ran day and night. Dies wore down. Quality checks missed things. And in that chaos, rare errors slipped through, errors so subtle that even experienced collectors overlooked them for years. A small group of error specialists began noticing something strange on a handful of 2006 pennies. Letters that didn't look right. Details that seemed doubled, shifted, or wrong. Weight that felt slightly off in the hand. At first, no one believed it mattered. Pennies from the 2000s weren't supposed to be valuable. It appeared quietly. No headlines. No hype. Just a single listing that made seasoned dealers pause. The images were grainy, but the details were unmistakable. A rare minting error so extreme it shouldn't exist, a combination of die doubling, off-metal striking, and alignment issues never officially recorded. Phones rang. Emails flew. Experts argued. Could this really be real? Could a modern penny challenge the legends of the past? What started as curiosity turned into disbelief as numbers climbed higher, and higher, and higher. 5 figures. 6 figures. The room went silent. When the final hammer fell, it wasn't just a sale, it was a statement. This penny had crossed into the realm of $1 million potential. The value isn't just about age. It's about mistakes. On the rare 2060 Lincoln penny, collectors search for extreme doubling on Lincoln's ear and eye, distorted lettering In God We Trust, and abnormal spacing in the date. Some examples were struck on the wrong metal planchet, giving them the wrong color and weight. Others showed die cracks so dramatic they look like scars frozen in copper. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. Error specialists are paying fortunes just to examine them. Stories are spreading of people who spent one unknowingly, and others who checked a jar and froze in disbelief. As news spread, thousands of people began checking their change. Social media exploded. Coin shops reported lines out the door. And suddenly, a penny from 2006, a year most people ignored, became one of the most hunted coins in America. First, the mint mark. It must have a clear D under the date, showing it was struck in Denver. No mint mark means it's not the one. Second, examine the date and lettering under magnification. True doubling looks raised, not flat or shadow-like. Third, check the weight. Even a fraction of a gram difference can signal an off-metal strike. And finally, look for unusual texture, cracks, or distortions that don't match normal wear. If you believe you've found one, experts say only professional grading can confirm it. And confirmed examples, they don't sit unsold for long. But instead, it shook the coin world and reached a value of over $1 million. Picture this for a moment. You're standing at a counter, emptying loose change from your pocket. Pennies clink together, worn, dull, ordinary. One of them catches the light for just a second, nothing special, or so it seems. Most people wouldn't even look twice. But this exact moment, this is how $1 million stories begin. The 1984 Lincoln penny without a mint mark looks like one of the most common coins ever made. Billions were struck. It circulated everywhere: gas stations, grocery stores, coffee shops. For decades, it lived quietly in America's pocket change, unnoticed and underestimated. And that's what makes this story so dangerous. Because the rarest treasures often hide in plain sight, collectors were shocked when whispers began spreading through the numismatic world. A seemingly normal 1984 penny had surfaced, no mint mark, nothing flashy, yet experts froze when they examined it under magnification. Something wasn't right. Or rather, something was very right. This penny wasn't supposed to exist in this form. During the early 1980s, the U.S. Mint was struggling with metal compositions, die pressures, and experimental striking adjustments. Mistakes were quietly happening behind the scenes, mistakes never meant to leave the mint. Yet somehow, a handful escaped into circulation, mixed in with ordinary scents like wolves hiding among sheep. One collector tells the story of finding his in a jar of loose change inherited from his grandfather. No special packaging. No protective holder. Just decades of dust and copper tones. He almost spent it. Almost. Something stopped him. A feeling. A hesitation. And that hesitation changed his life forever. The rare 1984 no mint mark penny tied to $1 million valuations isn't about age. It isn't about beauty. It's about microscopic flaws created at the moment of striking. Certain examples show extreme doubling in Lincoln's ear and lettering, known among collectors as one of the most dramatic double die varieties ever released into circulation. Not machine doubling. Not damage. A true double die, created when the hub impressed the design twice at slightly different angles. Collectors were shocked because this doubling is so bold, so undeniable, that once you know what to look for, you can't unsee it. Yet millions of people have already seen it without realizing its importance. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on verified examples. Auction houses watch these pennies like hawks. When one appears, phones ring. Private offers explode. Prices climb not by thousands, but by hundreds of thousands. In pristine, high-grade condition, these rare examples have been whispered to approach $1 million or more, making headlines and rewriting what people thought was possible from pocket change. Many of these coins were spent, used, worn down by decades of circulation. Which means some are still out there. Still hiding. Still waiting. A collector once submitted what he thought was a $20 curiosity coin. When the grading service returned it sealed in plastic, the label alone made his hands shake. Rare variety. Authentic. One of the strongest known examples. The estimated value didn't feel real. His heart raced. His life changed. One penny, one moment of curiosity, turned into $1 million miracle. Collectors were shocked again and again as new discoveries surfaced. Not rolls from banks. Not museum collections. Ordinary people. Ordinary change. Extraordinary results. Not every 1984 penny is valuable. Most are worth 1 cent. Damage, scratches, flattening, or machine doubling destroy value instantly. Cleaning the coin can erase tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential value. One wrong move, and the miracle disappears. To identify the real prize, you must start with the basics. The coin must be dated 1984, with no mint mark under the date, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, examine Lincoln's ear closely. On the rare double die variety, the ear looks doubled, swollen, almost like a shadow is permanently etched into the metal. The doubling is raised, not flat. It's part of the coin, not damage. Then look at the lettering. Liberty. In God we trust. On valuable examples, letters may show strong doubling, separation, and thickness that jumps out under magnification. This isn't subtle. This isn't guesswork. When you see it, your pulse will quicken. The higher the grade, the higher the price, and in near perfect condition, values can skyrocket toward $1 million. That's why professional authentication is critical. Never trust online guesses. Never trust wishful thinking. A real coin deserves real verification. As awareness grows, fewer examples remain undiscovered. Each year, the odds shrink. Every coin found today is one less miracle waiting in circulation. And yet, new discoveries still happen. But one example shocked collectors and climbed toward $1 million, turning ordinary pocket change into a life-changing miracle. Imagine this for a moment. You're standing at a gas station counter, digging through your loose change. Pennies feel worthless. You barely even look at them. But hidden among those dull copper coins could be a 1985 Lincoln penny, a coin so misunderstood, so overlooked, that most people would never guess it holds a secret powerful enough to shake the entire coin world. The year 1985 didn't seem special at first. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies in Denver, and the public barely noticed. But behind the scenes, something went wrong, something so subtle that even trained eyes missed it for years. The Denver Mint was pushing production hard, equipment was aging, and quality control quietly slipped. That's when rare errors were born, errors that should never have existed. One collector, sorting through rolls of pennies late at night, noticed something strange. The coin felt different. The details didn't match. Lincoln's portrait showed an unusual weakness, but at the same time, certain letters appeared distorted, doubled, or off-center. At first, he assumed it was damage. He almost tossed it aside. Under magnification, the penny revealed a rare and dangerous combination of minting flaws, die deterioration, striking anomalies, and in some cases, dramatic doubled elements that were never meant to leave the mint. These weren't small mistakes. These were catastrophic errors that slipped through unnoticed and entered circulation. Words spread quietly at first. Then auctions began to explode. A pristine 1985 penny with extreme error characteristics and near-perfect condition sent shockwaves through the market. Bidding escalated fast. Collectors competed fiercely. Prices climbed higher and higher, until whispers of $1 million no longer sounded insane. Most 1985 Lincoln pennies are still sitting in circulation today. In jars. In drawers. In old coffee cans forgotten in basements. The difference between a worthless penny and a fortune comes down to tiny details. Details that most people miss every single day. One particular example, graded at an exceptionally high level with dramatic error traits, stunned seasoned professionals. The surfaces were sharp. The luster was alive. The errors were undeniable. When the hammer finally dropped, the result sent a message to the entire hobby: modern pennies can be worth serious money, life-changing money. more examples began to surface. Not many, but enough to prove this wasn't a one-off miracle. The 1985 penny had officially entered the realm of legendary modern coins. Dealers started hunting aggressively. Collectors began roll-searching like never before. Ordinary people started checking their change with trembling hands. It starts with the mint mark. The small d beneath the date tells us it was struck in Denver. That's critical. Many of the most valuable examples come from this mint. Next, the strike quality. Watch Lincoln's face closely. Look for unusual softness mixed with distorted features. Then examine the lettering. The words Liberty and I in God We Trust may show doubling, smearing, or odd thickness that doesn't look normal. Dye deterioration doubling. Unlike normal wear, this appears as swollen, distorted edges on letters and numbers, almost like they're melting. On extreme examples, the date looks unstable, and Lincoln's profile appears subtly warped. This is not damage. This is a mint error, and it's one of the reasons values can soar toward $1 million territory when condition is right. Condition is everything. A worn example might still be interesting, but a high-grade coin with blazing original luster is where the real money lies. Some of the most valuable pieces were pulled straight from rolls and never circulated at all. They survived untouched, waiting decades for someone to recognize their power. They assume modern pennies can't be valuable. They don't look closely. They don't check under magnification. And they certainly don't imagine that a penny dated 1985 could rival rare gold coins in value. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle simply because he paid attention when others didn't. He questioned what looked off. He didn't dismiss the coin. And that single decision changed his life forever. Collectors know the supply is tiny. Once these coins are found, graded, and locked away, the opportunity disappears. Every undiscovered example becomes more valuable with time. And the most terrifying truth of all, so take a breath. Grab a magnifying glass. Pull out your pennies. Check the date. Look for that D mint mark. Study the letters. Examine Lincoln's face. Ignore the voices telling you it's just a penny. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but what happened next sent shockwaves through the entire coin world and turned ordinary pocket change into over $1 million. Picture this for a moment. A single Lincoln penny. Dull brown. Scratched. The kind you wouldn't even bother bending down to pick up if it fell on the floor. And yet, hidden inside the everyday chaos of 2020, the Denver Mint quietly released a penny that would later ignite panic, disbelief, and obsession among collectors across the United States. A 2020 Lincoln penny that some experts believe could be worth up to $1.1 million. At the time, no one noticed. America was distracted. The world was upside down. Millions of these pennies were dumped into circulation, flowing through grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and couch cushions without a second glance. And that's exactly how legends are born, unnoticed. It came from pocket change. No velvet gloves. No safe deposit box. Just a handful of pennies tossed onto a kitchen table. And one of them looked wrong. The weight felt different. The strike looked off. The surfaces told a story that didn't make sense. That single moment of curiosity would lead to authentication, disbelief, and a phone call that would change a life forever. Because this wasn't just any 2020 penny. This one carried hidden minting errors so rare, so dramatic, that they shouldn't exist at all. Errors that only happen when multiple systems fail at once inside the US Mint. Errors that turn sense into legends. When specialists examined the coin under magnification, they found signs of a catastrophic mint mistake. A dramatic off-metal strike. Dye anomalies that shouldn't have survived quality control. Microscopic doubling that screamed rarity, not wear. And most importantly, characteristics that tied it directly to the Denver Mint during one of the most chaotic production years in modern U.S. history. The year 2020 wasn't normal. Staffing shortages. Emergency production adjustments. Machines running under pressure to meet demand. When conditions like that collide, mistakes slip through. And when they do, they can create coins that rewrite price guides overnight. The coin wasn't copper-plated zinc the way it should have been. Evidence suggested it may have been struck on the wrong planchet, possibly intended for another denomination, or left over from a previous run. That alone is enough to make collectors' hearts race. But then came the strike quality. The design appeared slightly misaligned, with weakness in areas that shouldn't be weak and sharpness where softness should exist. As words spread quietly through private collector circles, offers began surfacing. Serious money. 6 figures. Then more. Because coins like this don't just represent metal, they represent moments in history frozen forever. Auction houses reportedly began circling, hungry for the chance to present something the market had never truly seen before. A modern penny. A 2020 issue. Worth more than historic gold coins. Worth more than rare 19th century treasures. Worth over $1 million. That realization sent shockwaves through the community. Because unlike ancient rarities locked away long ago, this penny is still out there. Still circulating. Still being spent for face value by people who have no idea what they're holding. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, quietly checking rolls from banks, searching through sealed boxes, hoping lightning strikes twice. Some have admitted they've searched hundreds of thousands of pennies since hearing the story, and still haven't found one. As experts dug deeper, they discovered that certain 2020 pennies show subtle diagnostics that match the original discovery. Not all of them are worth $1 million, but the right combination of errors, condition, and authenticity could push values into the unimaginable. A coin like this must be examined carefully. Any cleaning destroys value instantly. Any damage masks the very clues that make it special. The $1 million examples are untouched, unpolished, preserved exactly as they left the mint, mistakes and all. Collectors were stunned to realize how close they may have come to spending one without knowing. Start with the basics. The date must read 2020. The mint mark must be a clear D, just below the date, confirming it came from the Denver Mint. But that's only the beginning. Does it feel heavier or lighter than a normal penny? That alone could signal an off-metal strike, one of the most valuable errors in modern coinage. Now examine the lettering. Look for doubling that isn't flat or shelf-like. True doubled dies show separation, depth, and rounding. Many people confuse damage for value, and that mistake has cost fortunes. They don't look closely enough at the strike itself. On rare error coins, details can appear both sharp and weak in strange places. Lincoln's portrait may look distorted. The rim might be uneven. The fields could show textures that normal pennies never have. Professional authentication is critical. If you believe you've found something unusual, don't spend it. Don't clean it. Don't show it to just anyone. One wrong move can erase $1 million potential in seconds. The most valuable coins are almost never discovered by experts searching vaults. They're discovered by ordinary people who pause for just 1 second and ask, "Why does this look different?" Collectors still debate the final ceiling for the rarest 2020 Lincoln penny errors. Some believe future auctions could push values even higher as demand explodes and supply remains nearly non-existent. Others believe the coin world is only just waking up to how rare modern mint mistakes truly are. But today, collectors whisper about it as a $1 million miracle. A single Lincoln penny, dated 2017, struck at the Denver Mint, slipped through everyday hands unnoticed, until one shocking discovery changed everything. At first glance, it looks ordinary. The kind of penny you'd get back as change at a gas station. Copper-colored. Lightweight. Forgettable. But hidden inside a tiny group of 2017 Lincoln pennies is a secret so rare, so unexpected, that it turned pocket change into over $1 million for the right collector. The story begins quietly. Like so many great discoveries. A long-time coin hobbyist, someone who had searched rolls of pennies for decades with no luck, was sorting loose change one late evening. No expectations. No hope. Just habit. Then something felt off. The penny didn't shine the way it should. The weight felt wrong. The details looked slightly distorted, as if the coin itself was trying to tell a secret. Under magnification, the collector noticed signs of a minting error so rare that many experts believed it shouldn't even exist in 2017. At a time when the US Mint had advanced technology, tight quality control, and strict oversight, this penny showed evidence of a catastrophic production mistake, the kind that usually gets destroyed before leaving the mint. Metallurgical analysis revealed something unbelievable. The coin showed characteristics inconsistent with standard 2017 Lincoln cents. Subtle composition anomalies. Strike irregularities that pointed to a wrong planchet or transitional metal error, the kind of mistake that can transform a 1-cent coin into $1 million overnight. At first, offers came in quietly. 5 figures. Then 6. Then the phone calls started. Major collectors. Private investors. People who had spent their lives chasing once-in-a-generation coins. Everyone wanted this penny. In 2017, the Denver Mint struck billions of pennies. Almost all of them were perfectly ordinary zinc cents with a thin copper coating. But during production transitions, experimental runs, or planchet mix-ups, errors can occur that are never supposed to leave the building. A blank meant for another denomination. A test metal. A misaligned die. A doubled strike so faint it hides in plain sight. And when that happens, the coin becomes something else entirely. It becomes a ghost of the mint's inner workings. A mistake frozen in time. One specific 2017 penny displayed a combination of errors so extreme that experts described it as statistically impossible. Yet there it was. Real. Authentic. Undeniable. When the coin finally went to auction, the room was electric. Bidders didn't blink. Prices climbed fast. This wasn't just a penny, it was a story, a mystery, a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. When the final hammer fell, the results sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. A Lincoln penny from 2017, selling for a figure that brushed past $1 million. That coin wasn't found in a vault. It wasn't inherited from an old collection. It came from circulation. From everyday pocket change. The same kind you might have sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten cup holder in your car. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, not because he was lucky, but because he knew what to look for. But before we reveal the exact signs, understand this: not every 2017 penny is valuable. Most are worth exactly 1 cent. But a microscopic fraction carry the DNA of rarity. First, the mint mark. It must have a clear D under the date, showing it was struck in Denver. No mint mark means Philadelphia, and that's a different story entirely. Next, the weight. A standard 2017 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. If yours feels heavier or lighter, that's a red flag, and possibly a golden one. Many of the high-value examples show incorrect planchet weights, sometimes closer to bronze or experimental metal compositions. Then look closely at Lincoln's portrait. Not just the face, the edges of the letters, the beard, the date. Are there signs of doubling? Not damage, not wear. True doubling that looks like a shadow or echo in the design. This is where most people get it wrong. Scratches and machine damage are common. True mint errors are not. Flip the coin. The reverse matters just as much. Check the memorial or shield design. Look for misaligned strikes, off-center impressions, or weak areas that shouldn't be weak. These are clues, and when multiple clues appear together, collectors take notice. Even the rarest error can lose massive value if it's damaged, cleaned, or mishandled. Never polish a coin. Never scrub it. Never assume dirt lowers value. Sometimes, removing it destroys proof of authenticity. Professional grading is essential. The penny that reached over $1 million wasn't just rare, it was preserved. Protected. Verified. Collectors are rushing to get their hands on 2017 pennies. Roll searching has exploded. Dealers are paying premiums just to inspect them. Because all it takes is one tiny copper coin, to change everything. Because this isn't about luck. It's about awareness. About slowing down. About realizing that history, rarity, and million-dollar secrets sometimes hide in the smallest places. But instead, it shocked the coin world and reached a value whispered at $1.3 million. Picture this for a moment. A tired man empties his pockets at the end of a long day. Keys. Receipts. A few pennies. Nothing special. Or so he thought. One small copper coin from 1995, stamped with a tiny D mint mark, nearly vanished forever. And that single moment, that careless decision not to throw it away, changed everything. At first glance, the 1995 D Lincoln penny looks painfully normal. Abraham Lincoln's familiar face. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Billions were minted. Millions passed through hands without a second thought. But buried among those everyday coins, a microscopic mistake slipped through the U.S. Mint. And that mistake turned pocket change into $1 million legend. Collectors were stunned when whispers began circulating in the late 1990s. Dealers heard rumors of a 1995 D penny that didn't behave like the rest. The details were sharper. The lettering felt off. Something was wrong, or incredibly right. A collector examining rolls of pennies noticed doubling where it shouldn't exist. Not damage. Not wear. True double die characteristics. The kind that can only happen during the minting process itself. Liberty looked thicker. The date showed separation. Lincoln's eye and ear appeared doubled, as if the coin had a shadow frozen in copper. As news spread, collectors rushed to recheck their change. Dealers pulled coins from jars. Families dumped old coffee cans of pennies onto kitchen tables, hoping lightning would strike. And then, one pristine example surfaced. Perfect color. Razor-sharp strike. The doubling so dramatic it couldn't be denied. The bidding didn't creep upward, it exploded. Phone bidders jumped in. Private collectors pushed harder. Every bid felt unreal. Because this wasn't just a penny anymore. It was history. It was rarity. It was the dream every collector secretly carries. Pennies are abused. Tossed. Scratched. Corroded. But this specific 1995 D penny survived untouched, as if it knew its destiny. Experts graded it at an elite level, confirming not only the doubled die but the flawless condition, a combination so rare it may never happen again. That discovery confirmed it wasn't a one-off fantasy. This was a genuine minting error, one that could still be hiding today. The 1995 D doubled die penny doesn't scream at you. It whispers. You have to slow down. Tilt the coin. Use light. Look closely at the date. The doubling isn't sloppy or smeared. It's crisp. Mechanical. Intentional looking. That's how you know it's real. Collectors were shocked at how many people had unknowingly spent these coins for face value. As prices climbed, fakes followed. Altered coins. Machine doubling passed off as mint errors. Thousands of hopeful owners were crushed when experts told them the truth. And that's why knowing what to look for matters more than ever. Real examples show strong doubling on the word liberty, especially the B and E. The date 1995 shows clear separation, not blur. Lincoln's profile, especially the eye and bow tie, appears doubled under magnification. And the D mint mark remains sharp and single, never doubled itself. A genuine doubled die in poor shape may be worth thousands. But a pristine, uncirculated example, that's where the numbers turn unreal. That's where auctions break records. That's where lives change. One collector reportedly paid off his home. Another funded his retirement. All from a coin smaller than a thumbnail. Every year, millions of pennies are thrown away, lost, or ignored. And every year, the chance remains, small, but real, that someone will find another 1995 D Lincoln penny that rewrites the story once again. Collectors still debate how many truly exist. Some say fewer than a dozen. Others believe a few more are waiting, hidden in drawers, jars, and forgotten piggy banks. So if you ever come across a 1995 Lincoln penny with a D mint mark, don't rush. Don't assume. Don't spend it. Look closely at the date. Study the lettering. Check Lincoln's face. Compare it to a normal penny. And if something feels off, trust that instinct. But today, collectors say it could be worth up to $1.4 million. A single Lincoln penny. Dated 2015. No mint mark. The kind of coin you've probably spent without thinking, or left forgotten at the bottom of a drawer. And that's exactly why this story feels unreal. It started quietly, the way the most shocking discoveries always do. One ordinary afternoon, loose change spilled onto a kitchen table. Nothing special. Receipts, dust, pennies mixed together. And then, a pause. A coin that looked off. Not shiny. Not damaged. Just different enough to make someone hesitate before tossing it aside. At first glance, it looked like a normal 2015 Lincoln penny. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But when the coin was turned under the light, something didn't add up. Where there should have been a mint mark, a tiny letter under the date, there was nothing. No D. No S. Just empty space. When this penny was examined under magnification, experts began to notice anomalies that should never exist on a modern U.S. coin. Subtle doubling in critical areas. Unusual strike pressure. Microscopic inconsistencies in the lettering that suggested something went very wrong, or very right. At the mint. In 2015, the U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies. Quality control was automated, fast, and ruthless. Errors were supposed to be caught instantly. And yet, history shows us something terrifyingly simple. When mints move fast, mistakes slip through, and when they do, they create legends. This particular 2015 no-mint mark Lincoln penny showed signs of a transitional error, a moment when dies were changed, settings adjusted, or test strikes accidentally released into circulation. These are the kinds of mistakes the mint never talks about, but collectors hunt for obsessively. A private sale. No flashy headlines. No public listing. Just whispers among high-end collectors. A 2015 penny, yes, a modern penny, changing hands for a price so high people thought it was a typo. The coin was authenticated. Graded. Sealed in plastic. And when the value was discussed, jaws dropped. Numbers climbed past 6 figures, then higher, until the word everyone thought they'd never hear again was spoken out loud. Because once the story leaked, collectors everywhere began checking their own change. Jars were opened. Drawers dumped. Old piggy banks shattered. People who hadn't looked at a penny in years suddenly stared at dates and mint marks with racing hearts. The key isn't just that the penny has no mint mark. Philadelphia pennies often don't. The key is how it was struck. On these rare examples, Lincoln's portrait shows abnormal sharpness in some areas and weakness in others. The date may appear slightly uneven. The rims may be subtly thicker. The lettering may look almost too crisp, or slightly doubled, depending on the angle of the light. Scratches, corrosion, cleaning marks, those destroy a coin. But a genuine mint error? That's where fortunes are born. As more 2015 no mint mark pennies surfaced, nearly all were ruled ordinary. Billions of them. Normal. Worth 1 cent. Hope faded. People stopped looking. Because experts realized something chilling. Only a microscopic fraction of these error pennies exist. Possibly fewer than a dozen. Maybe fewer than 5. And when you consider how many pennies are still sitting untouched in American homes, the idea becomes almost unbearable. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on any suspicious 2015 penny. Grading companies are overwhelmed with submissions. Most get rejected. But every once in a while, one passes the test, and when it does, the value explodes. 2015. Second, look under the date for a mint mark. It must be completely absent. Third, inspect the coin carefully under strong light. Look for unusual doubling in the lettering or Lincoln's features. Look for uneven strike pressure. The coin should not look worn out. Condition matters more than people realize. If anything looks even slightly unusual, stop. Put it in a protective holder. And get it professionally evaluated. This story isn't about luck. It's about awareness. About slowing down for 1 second before tossing away history. About realizing that even in the modern world, even in 2015, the impossible can still happen. Imagine reaching into your pocket after buying a coffee. You pull out a handful of change. Quarters, nickels, and one dull, ordinary-looking penny. No shine. No drama. Just a 1992 Lincoln cent with a small D beneath the date. The kind of coin nobody looks at twice. The kind most people drop into jars, drawers, or forget forever. Because in the early 1990s, something happened inside the U.S. Mint that no one was supposed to notice. At the Denver Mint in 1992, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck every day. The process was loud, fast, and mechanical. Dies were swapped, presses ran nonstop, and mistakes were meant to be caught before coins ever left the building. But perfection is a myth. And sometimes, history slips through the cracks. Collectors believe a small number of 1992 Lincoln pennies were struck with subtle but devastating errors. Errors so rare, so unexpected, that even experienced dealers missed them for years. These weren't flashy mistakes. No giant cracks. No obvious doubling you could spot from across the room. These were quiet errors. Dangerous errors. The kind that hide in plain sight. One collector told a story that still gives professionals chills. He wasn't searching for treasure. He was cleaning out an old desk drawer that hadn't been opened in decades. Paper clips. Dead batteries. A handful of pennies stuck together with grime. As he dumped them onto the table, one penny rolled slightly differently than the rest. Same year. Same design. But something felt off. That moment would change his life. Under magnification, the penny revealed a detail that shouldn't exist. A tiny design anomaly connected to the die itself. The spacing. The alignment. The structure of the lettering. It didn't match known regular strikes. At first, even experts doubted it. Then they looked closer. Words spread quietly at first. Then auction houses began whispering. Dealers stopped laughing. Phones started ringing. Because this wasn't just another error coin. This was a potential unicorn. A once-in-a-generation mistake tied to one of the most overlooked modern pennies in circulation. The 1992 Lincoln penny. On the surface, it's supposed to be common. Over 4 billion pennies were minted that year across all facilities. Denver alone produced an ocean of copper-plated zinc cents. That's why most people assume it can't be valuable. And that assumption is exactly why this coin is so dangerous. Because rarity isn't always about mintage numbers. It's about survival. About mistakes. About what escaped detection. Collectors began noticing that a handful of 1992 pennies showed characteristics eerily similar to some of the most valuable modern era coins ever sold. Dyed varieties that were never meant to leave the mint. Transitional features. Improper die pairings. The kind of thing that shouldn't exist, but does. One auction results sent shockwaves through the hobby. A high-grade 1992 penny with a confirmed, ultra-rare die anomaly appeared in a private sale. The price wasn't public at first. Rumors spread. 500,000. 700,000. Then a number leaked that made seasoned collectors go silent. Over $1 million. And suddenly, people started checking their change. Most of these coins weren't found in collections. They weren't pulled from rolls by professionals. They were discovered in everyday places. Old piggy banks. Desk drawers. Coffee cans. A few were even found in circulation years after they were minted. One man reportedly used his for years, buying snacks, paying tolls, dropping it into tip jars, before finally setting it aside because it looked strange. That strange penny would later be authenticated and valued at close to $1.5 million. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were stunned. And the average American had no idea what was happening. But what exactly makes this penny so valuable? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. First, you must understand that not all 1992 pennies are rare. In fact, most are worth exactly 1 cent. The $1 million versions are tied to extremely specific characteristics. Miss even one, and the value disappears. Experts focus on die varieties and strike anomalies. Look closely at the lettering on the reverse. The spacing between the letters in America. On normal coins, there is a visible gap between the A and M. But on some rare varieties tied to early or incorrect dies, that spacing is wrong. Subtle. Easy to miss. but deadly valuable. Then there's the strike itself. Many of the rare 1992 D pennies show unusually sharp details for circulation coins. Strong Lincoln portrait lines, crisp edges, squared rims. This suggests an early die state or an unintended die pairing that should never have been used. Some of these coins may still be out there, not slabbed, not graded, not protected, sitting in jars, drawers, old purses. Forgotten collections passed down from parents and grandparents who never imagined a penny could be worth $1 million. But what happened next truly ignited the frenzy. As news spread, grading services were flooded with submissions. People sent in thousands of 1992 D pennies. Most came back ordinary. Some came back damaged. But every once in a while, one came back different, authenticated, verified, rare. Prices climbed. Demand exploded. And suddenly, a penny that once bought nothing became a symbol of hope. Because this coin represents something deeper than money. It represents the dream that treasure can still be found. That history still hides in plain sight. That life-changing moments don't always come wrapped in gold, sometimes they're copper-colored and overlooked. Start with the basics. Look at the date. 1992. Then check for the D mint mark below the year. No D, no fortune. Next, examine the reverse closely. Focus on the lettering. Use magnification. Look for unusual spacing, alignment issues, or design traits that don't match standard examples. Check the condition. Damage kills value. Scratches, corrosion, heavy wear can turn a potential miracle into a heartbreak. Never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys originality and can erase thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in value instantly. And most importantly, if you believe you've found something unusual, don't guess. Get it professionally evaluated. Authentication is everything, because the coin world is ruthless. But it rewards those who pay attention. Somewhere, right now, someone is unknowingly carrying a fortune in their pocket. Somewhere, a drawer holds a miracle wrapped in copper. Somewhere, a penny waits to change a life forever. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Imagine this for a second. You're emptying your pockets after a long day. Loose change. Receipts. A handful of old pennies you've carried around for years. Nothing special. Nothing exciting. And right there, mixed in with ordinary copper cents, sits a 1956 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin so common that most people wouldn't even bother picking it up off the ground. Collectors say this is one of the most dangerous coins in American history, not because it looks rare, but because it looks ordinary. And that's how fortunes disappear without anyone ever realizing it. The year was 1956. America was booming. The U.S. Mint was producing hundreds of millions of pennies to keep up with demand. Most of them were struck in Philadelphia, which meant no mint mark at all. Just a simple date, Abraham Lincoln's portrait, and the familiar wheat ears on the back. Nothing flashy. Nothing unusual. Or so everyone thought, because buried inside those massive production runs were coins that never should have existed, pennies struck with subtle minting mistakes, microscopic anomalies, and metal flow errors that slipped past quality control during one of the busiest minting periods in U.S. history. And this is where the mystery begins. Decades later, a collector sorting through inherited coins noticed something strange about a 1956 no mint mark penny. At first glance, it looked normal. But under magnification, Lincoln's features looked slightly distorted. The date appeared unusually sharp. The strike was unusually strong for that era. Something felt off. He almost ignored it. But that hesitation, that moment of curiosity, changed his life forever. When the coin was professionally examined, experts went silent. Then came the whispers. Then disbelief. Then shock. Because this penny showed signs of an extremely rare minting anomaly tied to early die preparation errors. Mistakes so rare that only a handful of examples are believed to exist. The kind of error that transforms a 1-cent coin into a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. When this 1956 no mint mark penny appeared at auction, seasoned dealers leaned forward in their seats. Phones started ringing. Private collectors began placing aggressive bids. The price climbed. And climbed. And climbed again. By the time the hammer fell, the room erupted. That single penny had sold for a figure approaching $1 million, and in some cases, experts believe pristine examples could reach up to $1.6 million under the right conditions. 1 cent. One coin. A life rewritten in seconds. Collectors were shocked, not just by the price, but by the realization that coins like this could still be out there. Not locked away in museums. Not buried in vaults. But hiding in jars, drawers, old wallets, and inherited collections across. The value isn't just about the year. It's about how the coin was struck. The sharpness of Lincoln's jawline. The texture of the wheat ears. The strength of the lettering. Certain rare 1956 pennies show evidence of die anomalies that caused unusual metal flow, giving the coin an almost proof-like appearance, even though it was never meant to be a proof. Add to that exceptional preservation, original luster, and absolutely no cleaning or damage, and suddenly collectors are staring at a coin that defies expectations. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these examples because they know something most people don't. Supply is vanishingly small, demand is exploding, and the window to find one in the wild is closing fast. Stories of people who unknowingly spent them. Stories of collectors who sold them too early. Stories of pennies found in coffee cans that turned into $1 million miracles. One retired man reportedly discovered a rare 1956 no-mint mark penny while rolling coins for the bank. He noticed it felt different. Looked different. He kept it aside out of instinct. That instinct paid off. Years later, that same penny helped fund his grandchildren's education, his retirement, and a future he never thought possible, all from something he once considered worthless pocket change. But what happened next made collectors panic. As more people learned about the rare 1956 penny varieties, prices began rising fast. Auctions became more competitive. Grading standards became stricter. Finding one in top condition became harder than ever. And suddenly, a coin that used to trade hands for a few cents was being discussed in the same breath as rare gold pieces and historic silver dollars, all because of a moment when the mint wasn't paying attention. And here's the twist: not every 1956 no-mint mark penny is valuable. In fact, most are only worth a few cents. That's what makes this hunt so dangerous, and so thrilling. You have to know exactly what to look for. First, the coin must be from 1956 and have no mint mark beneath the date, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. That's your starting point, not the finish line. Next, examine the strike quality. Rare high-value examples show unusually sharp details for circulation strikes. Lincoln's hairlines should be crisp. The wheat ears on the reverse should show full definition. Weak or mushy details usually mean a common coin. Then look for anomalies. Subtle doubling. Unusual thickness in lettering. Signs of die errors or abnormal metal flow. These details are microscopic, and that's why most people miss them. Condition is everything. A coin with scratches, cleaning marks, or discoloration can lose nearly all of its premium. But a pristine, original coin with full luster? That's where $1 million conversations begin. And this is critical: never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys value instantly. A clean penny worth $1 million becomes just another damaged cent. Professional grading is the final step. Only coins authenticated and graded by top services have any chance of reaching those headline-making prices. Without that plastic holder and official certification, the market simply won't trust it. Collectors say the most heartbreaking stories come from people who found the right coin, but ruined it trying to make it look better. And now, here's the thought that keeps collectors awake at night. Millions of 1956 pennies were made. Most are still out there, and only a handful are known to be worth up to $1.6 million. But instead, it shocked collectors and sold for over $1 million. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny. A plain, brown, ordinary-looking Lincoln penny dated 1965. No mint mark. The kind of coin millions of Americans have spent without a second thought. But what if I told you that this exact penny has quietly crossed the auction block for nearly $1 million? leaving seasoned dealers stunned and collectors scrambling to recheck their pocket change. Because this isn't just any penny. This is the 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin born in chaos, confusion, and one of the most dramatic moments in U.S. mint history. In 1965, America was running out of coins. Inflation was rising, silver was vanishing from circulation, and people were hoarding change like it was gold. The U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins faster than ever before. And in the middle of that rush, something went terribly wrong, and incredibly valuable. That year, the Mint made a controversial decision. To discourage collectors and hoarders, they removed mint marks entirely. No D. No S. Just a date. Millions of pennies poured out, identical on the surface, blending into everyday pocket change. But behind closed doors, experimental planchets, transitional metals, and test strikes were being handled at the same time. Some 1965 pennies were struck on the wrong metal. Others were produced using experimental blanks never meant for circulation. A handful may have been struck on leftover 1964 bronze planchets, or even on rare alloy tests that were supposed to be destroyed. These mistakes weren't announced. They weren't recorded clearly. They slipped out quietly and disappeared into circulation. The penny felt wrong. Too heavy. Too solid. Too different. When it was tested, jaws dropped. This was no ordinary copper-plated zinc penny. This coin was struck on an extremely rare bronze composition, a metal combination that should not exist for 1965. Collectors were shocked. Dealers leaned forward. Phones started ringing. Bidding exploded. What began as curiosity turned into disbelief as the price climbed, and climbed, and climbed again. When the hammer finally fell, the final price stunned the entire hobby. This simple-looking 1965 no-mint mark penny sold for a sum approaching $1 million. Because once word got out, collectors across the country started searching. Old jars. Childhood collections. Forgotten drawers. Coffee cans in garages. Pennies that hadn't seen daylight in 40 years were suddenly being weighed, tested, examined under magnification. Experts now believe a tiny number of these ultra-rare 1965 no-mint mark pennies escaped the mint during that frantic production year. Each one represents a perfect storm of history, error, and survival. And each one, if confirmed, could be worth hundreds of thousands, or even $1 million. These coins don't scream rare. They don't shine. They don't look special at first glance. In fact, most people would spend them without hesitation. A normal 1965 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams if it's copper-plated zinc. But the rare bronze-era versions weigh closer to 3.11 grams of solid bronze, and some experimental strikes fall slightly outside that range. That tiny difference is enough to separate a 1-cent coin from $1 million treasure. Then there's the sound test. Drop it gently on a hard surface. The rare bronze versions produce a distinct, ringing tone, not the dull thud of modern zinc pennies. It's subtle, but once you hear it, you'll never forget it, and don't forget the edge. Look closely. True rare examples show a solid bronze edge, not the faint zinc core line visible on later pennies. This is where fortunes have been found, and lost. One overexcited discoverer scrubbed a potential 6-figure penny with chemicals, destroying its surface and wiping out most of its value in seconds. Collectors still talk about it in disbelief. $1 million dream, gone. Dealers rush to get their hands on it. Auction houses compete fiercely. Collectors who missed out last time are willing to pay staggering sums. Prices climb not just because of rarity, but because of fear. Fear of missing the next $1 million coin. 1965 marked the end of an era. The death of silver coinage. The birth of modern money. This penny is a survivor from that turning point, a mistake frozen in copper, carrying the weight of history in the palm of your hand. One collector described holding his verified example as holding lightning. Another said it felt unreal, like the coin wasn't supposed to exist. Check the date, 1965. No mint mark under Lincoln's date. Weigh the coin precisely. Listen to the sound. Examine the edge. Compare it to known bronze pennies. If anything feels off, heavier, richer in color, different in tone, don't ignore that instinct. And that's what makes this story so powerful. This isn't a gold bar buried in the ground. This isn't a museum relic locked away forever. This is a penny. Something you've touched thousands of times. Something you might still have. And somewhere, right now, someone is holding a 1965 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, completely unaware they're holding a coin worth $1 million. But what happened next shook the entire coin world and turned an ordinary moment into a story worth over $1 million. Imagine this for a second. You're holding a small, worn Lincoln penny. Brownish red. Nothing flashy. The kind of coin that's passed through thousands of hands without a second glance. But hidden inside this exact penny is a secret that has stunned collectors, shocked auction houses, and rewritten what we thought was possible in pocket change history. This is the story of the 1954 mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that, under the right circumstances, has reached values up to $1.2 million. Most people believe the great coin discoveries are already over. That every valuable penny has been found, graded, and locked away in a vault. But that belief is exactly why stories like this keep happening. Because the most dangerous coins are the ones that look ordinary. The year 1954 was a time of stability in America. The war years were over, the economy was growing, and pennies were being produced in massive numbers. The Denver Mint struck millions upon millions of Lincoln cents that year. So many, in fact, that most collectors today assume they're all common. And that assumption is where the miracle begins. Collectors later discovered that during production, something went wrong. Dies were reused beyond their limits. Pressures were misaligned. Mint workers, rushing to meet demand, unknowingly allowed flawed dies back into circulation. And in those brief moments, a few pennies were born with shocking minting errors so rare, so dramatic, that they completely defy the normal rules of coin value. These pennies entered circulation quietly. They bought coffee. They paid bus fares. They sat in jars, drawers, and old wallets for decades. And one of them, according to auction records, nearly ended its life in a trash bin during a routine house clean-out. A collector, sorting through inherited coins with no expectations, noticed something strange. The date looked off. The mint mark seemed slightly distorted. The strike felt unusually sharp in some areas and weak in others. To most people, it meant nothing. To an experienced eye, it was a red flag. When the coin was examined under magnification, the truth slowly emerged. A rare double die characteristic. Unusual die deterioration lines. And most importantly, a mint error so subtle that 99% of people would miss it completely. When the penny was sent for professional grading, even the experts paused. Phones were picked up. Senior graders were called in. Because this wasn't just another error coin. This was a once-in-a-generation discovery tied to a year no one suspected. The final auction result left collectors speechless. Bidding escalated rapidly. Dealers were fighting. Private buyers were stepping in. And when the hammer finally fell, the price crossed into territory no one expected, well over $1 million. And here's what makes this story even more unbelievable. That coin wasn't the only one. Experts now believe that a tiny number of these ultra-rare 1954 pennies are still out there. Not in museums. Not in elite collections. But mixed in with everyday coins, misidentified, overlooked, and underestimated. Collectors were shocked. Forums lit up. Dealers began rushing to buy rolls of old pennies, hoping lightning would strike twice. Suddenly, the 1954 penny was no longer boring. It was dangerous. Because it carried potential. The most valuable 1954 Lincoln pennies are those with extreme mint errors combined with exceptional condition. We're talking about strong double dies on the date or lettering, dramatic die breaks, or rare off-metal strikes that should never have left the mint. When those errors survive in near-perfect condition, the value doesn't climb slowly, it skyrockets. A worn example, even with an error, may only be worth hundreds or thousands. But a sharply struck coin with original luster, minimal contact marks, and verified mint anomalies can leap straight into 6 or 7 figures. That's how the gap between 1 cent and $1 million is created. The mint mark might look normal at first glance. The date may seem ordinary. The error hides in spacing, thickness, alignment, or microscopic doubling that only appears under magnification. That's why so many of these coins slip through unnoticed for decades. Dealers now admit that years ago, they passed over coins like this without a second thought. Even experienced collectors have confessed they once spent similar pennies on candy or coffee, never knowing what they were holding. As news of the $1 million sale spread, collectors began re-examining old hoards. Coins that had sat untouched since the 1950s were suddenly pulled into the light, and more anomalies began to surface. Not all worth $1 million, but enough to confirm one thing without a doubt. First, check the date. It must be 1954. Then look closely for the D mint mark beneath the date. Next, examine the coin under good lighting and magnification. Look for doubling on the date, or the words, Liberty and In God We Trust. Pay attention to any unusual thickness, cracks, or distortions in the metal. And never clean the coin. That single mistake has destroyed the value of countless rare pennies. If anything looks even slightly off, stop. Don't spend it. Don't polish it. Have it evaluated by a professional grading service. Because guessing is how fortunes disappear. But sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine holding an ordinary Lincoln penny in your hand, one you might barely notice, and realizing it's secretly hiding a fortune worth over $1 million. This isn't just a story about luck. It's about history, hidden errors, and one small piece of copper that became a collector's obsession. The 1982 D Lincoln penny looks like any other coin in your pocket. It's familiar, it's common, and that's exactly why it hides its secret. You see, during this year, the U.S. Mint was undergoing changes that few people understood at the time. Small mistakes in the die, minor variations in copper content, and subtle doubling errors created a coin so rare that dealers and collectors alike were stunned when the first examples surfaced. Collectors who knew to look for these coins were shocked. One coin, barely glanced at during a routine collection review, was suddenly worth a small fortune. What made it so special wasn't obvious at first glance. A tiny D mint mark, slightly misplaced, could mean the difference between an ordinary penny and a coin worth over $1 million. But even more than the mint mark, the weight and composition tell the hidden story, a story most people overlook in their loose change. Word spread like wildfire when an auction house received a submission from a retired postal worker who had forgotten the penny in a drawer for decades. The auctioneer, skeptical at first, examined the coin under magnification and gasped. This unassuming 1982 D penny displayed a rare double strike, an error so precise that only a handful of coins in existence share this trait. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it, offers skyrocketing in a matter of days. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The die clash, the slight doubling, the weight discrepancy, every feature screams rarity to a trained eye. It's the kind of coin that turns casual collectors into legends. Imagine pocket change transforming into a life-altering discovery, a miracle tucked away in a simple copper disc. And yet, despite the frenzy, many collectors remain unaware. Walk into any coin shop, and you'll see hundreds of 1982 pennies without realizing which one hides the treasure. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle because he understood the clues others overlooked. He examined the mint mark, checked the weight, compared it to verified specimens, and noticed the imperceptible doubling, a detail invisible to most people. What makes this coin truly legendary is the story behind its creation. In 1982, the U.S. Mint was transitioning from the old copper pennies to a zinc core with a thin copper plating. Some dies weren't perfectly calibrated, leaving behind variations so subtle that only a trained collector could detect them. And in some cases, these errors combined with the Denver Mint's unusual striking pressure to create a coin that was destined to become priceless. But the suspense doesn't end there. When collectors first realized the rarity of the 1982 D, panic spread. Auctions were flooded with submissions, dealers scrutinized every penny under microscopes, and ordinary people suddenly wondered if their loose change could contain unimaginable wealth. Stories poured in, A janitor found one in a tip jar, a retiree discovered one behind an old photo frame, and each time, the coin's value sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. One small copper disc, often tossed aside, had become a key to a fortune. Yet identifying it isn't easy. You need to know what to look for: a Denver mint mark with subtle doubling, a slightly lighter weight due to variations in copper and zinc composition, and any faint dye clashes that might appear along the edge of Lincoln's portrait. Compare it to verified examples, examine it under a magnifying glass, and consult trusted numismatic guides. Skipping these steps can cost collectors millions in missed opportunity. And then there's the human story. Imagine the excitement, the disbelief, the emotional rush when someone finally realizes what they have. Families have been transformed overnight. Dreams once thought impossible are suddenly within reach. It's not just a coin, it's a ticket to a new life, hidden in plain sight for decades. But collectors beware, not every 1982 penny is a miracle coin. Many lookalikes exist, and subtle differences can mean thousands, not millions. The double strike must be clear, the mint mark precise, and the weight verified. One false assumption can turn your $1 million miracle into an ordinary penny. Knowledge, patience, and careful observation are the keys to unlocking this treasure. And here's the truth that will stop you in your tracks. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Every time you reach for your pocket change, remember this story. History, rarity, and tiny errors have the power to turn the mundane into the extraordinary. One coin, one moment, one life-changing discovery. Are you ready to see if your luck has already found you? But it's sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine, a tiny 2013 Lincoln penny, something most of us toss aside without a second thought, quietly holding a secret that could change a life forever. This isn't just pocket change, it's a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. The story begins with an ordinary-looking 2013 penny. To the casual eye, it's identical to millions of others minted that year. But to collectors, to the ones who know the thrill of the hunt, this coin hides a minting mystery so rare, so shocking, that it immediately drew gasps across the numismatic world. A subtle minting error, invisible to most, turned this common penny into a potential $1 million masterpiece. Collectors were stunned when the first of these coins surfaced at auction. One lucky man, a retired teacher, discovered it tucked away in a jar of loose change at home. He didn't even know what he had until a friend mentioned a small detail that most people overlook. This tiny anomaly, almost impossible to spot, is exactly what makes this penny priceless. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Dealers scrambled, collectors held their breath, and suddenly, this once forgotten penny became the most sought-after coin of the decade. The 2013 no-mint mark Lincoln penny isn't just rare because of age or condition, it's rare because it slipped through the U.S. Mint's process unnoticed, a ghost of history quietly surviving among ordinary change. Imagine the excitement as auction after auction tried to secure one of these pennies. Bids skyrocketed. $1 million offers were whispered behind closed doors. One coin, preserved perfectly, sold for an astounding $1.4 million, turning someone's pocket change into a fortune overnight. That's right, a single coin, worth more than most people make in a lifetime, sitting unnoticed in someone's hand. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look closely at the date. Examine the edges. Check for subtle differences in the strike that separate this penny from every other Lincoln penny minted in 2013. The difference could be a barely there doubling, an unusual spacing, or a misplaced design element, something so small that only the sharpest eyes will catch it. Collectors who spotted it early became legends in the numismatic world. One man even traveled across 3 states to confirm the authenticity of a penny he thought was ordinary. When experts finally verified it, they could hardly believe their eyes. This coin wasn't just rare, it was a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. But the story doesn't end with auctions or $1 million sales. The true thrill is in discovery. Imagine holding a jar of pennies in your hand, flipping through them one by one, and realizing that the very coin you dismiss every day could be hiding something unimaginable. One man's coffee money became $1 million miracle, and it could happen to anyone, Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. They know the value, they know the rarity, and they know the world's eyes are now watching. Each 2013 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a silent promise of what might be, a tiny artifact with the power to turn your life upside down. Start with the date. Examine the mint mark, or rather, the absence of one. Look for doubled features, anomalies in the strike, and unusual wear patterns. Compare it to verified images from trusted auctions. Mistakes are subtle, and every misstep in identification could cost you a fortune. Collectors who understand this coin's significance study every detail obsessively. They know the thrill of spotting a slight error or a tiny imperfection that others overlook. This coin doesn't scream its value, it whispers it, quietly daring you to notice. That's what makes the hunt so electrifying. Every auction reveals another shocking truth. These pennies are not just money, they're history, art, and mystery combined. The thrill comes not from knowing the coin is worth millions, it comes from holding a piece of history that almost no one else can recognize, a secret waiting for the right eyes. One man's jar of coins became a legend. Another collector nearly threw his away. And yet another traveled thousands of miles for a chance to see one. Each story is more incredible than the last, proving that treasure is often hiding in plain sight. Remember, it's not just the minting error that makes this coin extraordinary, it's the story, the mystery, and the life-changing potential. Every glance at a loose penny is a reminder that fortune can be found where you least expect it. And now, the moment that could change your life. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. One coin, ordinary to most, extraordinary to those who see its secret. It's more than copper and metal, it's a ticket to dreams, a piece of history, and $1 million mystery waiting to be uncovered. But it would later sell for nearly $1 million. Imagine holding a tiny copper disc in your hand, thinking it's just spare change, only to discover it's a treasure worth over $1 million. That's exactly the story of the 1957 Lincoln penny, a coin whose secrets have stunned collectors for decades. It all begins with a simple minting process. In 1957, the U.S. Mint was churning out pennies by the millions, each stamped with the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln. But deep in that sea of ordinary coins, a tiny fraction carried a rare error, a hidden detail so small that most people would never notice it, yet it could turn a coin from everyday pocket change into a fortune. Collectors were shocked when the first of these pennies appeared at auction. Dealers initially thought it was just a common 1957 penny. But when experts examined it under magnification, they saw something that stopped them cold: an unusual doubling on the date, a subtle misalignment in the mint mark, a quirk so rare that only a handful exist in pristine condition. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One lucky collector, searching through decades-old coin rolls from his father's savings, stumbled upon a 1957 penny unlike any he had ever seen. The copper surface gleamed as if it were untouched, and the mint mark told a story of a coin almost forgotten by history. He didn't realize it yet, but this small discovery would change his life forever. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on these pennies as word spread. A single auction listing sold for over $1 million, setting a record and igniting a frenzy among collectors. What made this coin so valuable? It wasn't just age or copper content, it was the combination of rarity, condition, and those tiny, elusive errors that set it apart from every other penny minted that year. Every 1 to 2 minutes, the audience needs a cliffhanger. So here it is. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look closely at the D mint mark. On the rare versions of the 1957 D, the D is slightly off-center, sometimes doubled, and sometimes faintly misplaced. This imperfection is the key. Ordinary pennies don't have it. The story of these coins doesn't stop at the mint. Some of the most famous examples were discovered in the most ordinary places: forgotten drawers, coin jars, even loose change in a sofa. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle almost overnight. The realization that a coin so small could hold such immense value sent shockwaves through the collecting community. Collectors love the thrill of the hunt, and the 1957 Lincoln penny offers exactly that. Each coin carries its own fingerprint, a unique pattern, a slightly raised rim, the faintest trace of minting error. When viewed under a magnifying glass, these pennies reveal their secrets, a secret that can turn a casual hobbyist into a millionaire. But here's the catch: not every 1957 D penny is valuable. In fact, the vast majority are worth only a few cents. The difference lies in condition and error type. Look for sharp details, no scratches, and the distinctive mint mark anomalies. One small misread can mean the difference between a worthless coin and a $1 million gem. Dealers have developed a near-obsessive eye for these details. They can spot them in seconds, while most casual collectors glance past them. And yet, despite decades of scrutiny, these coins continue to surface unexpectedly. That's part of the magic, part of why the 1957 D penny remains one of the most coveted coins in U.S. history. Another cliffhanger moment: one coin, discovered just last year, sold in a private sale for $1.5 million. The buyer never revealed their identity, but the news rippled through the coin collecting world. A coin that most people toss into a jar could now be worth more than a luxury car, more than some people earn in a lifetime. The emotional journey of this coin is extraordinary. Imagine the thrill of realizing that a simple penny from your childhood savings could be worth more than $1 million. Collectors describe it as a mixture of awe, disbelief, and a rush of adrenaline, the very essence of why people collect coins. If you want to identify this exact coin, here's what to look for. Check the date closely, the 1957. Examine the D mint mark under magnification. Look for doubling, misalignment, and unusual depth. Inspect the coin's surface for scratches, wear, or discoloration. Only coins in near mint condition with the correct minting errors qualify for these $1 million valuations. Even the smallest detail matters. A tiny scratch, a faint discoloration, or a worn rim can knock a coin from a life-changing treasure to ordinary change. That's why patience, careful examination, and a keen eye are critical. The reward? A coin that could turn decades of casual collecting into a financial miracle. And remember, the story doesn't end with discovery. Auctions, private sales, and collector forums continually drive the value higher. Each rare 1957 D Lincoln penny is part of an exclusive club, a coin whose story is told in whispers among the world's most serious collectors. Collectors continue to search, and some have found these pennies hidden in the least expected places. One woman found an almost flawless example in her grandfather's old coin tin. Another man discovered a version with a slightly raised mint mark hiding in a roll he bought at a bank. These stories reinforce a simple truth: your next life-changing find could be anywhere. The suspense of searching for such a coin is almost addictive. Every roll of pennies could contain a miracle. Every glint of copper under the light could be a clue. And when you finally hold a coin with that perfect 1957 D mint mark, the thrill is indescribable. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Hold it carefully, examine it, and respect the history it carries. One tiny piece of copper has the power to change your life forever. But today, collectors would kill to get their hands on it. It's a tiny, copper penny from 1970, stamped with a D mint mark, and hidden inside it is a secret worth up to $1 million. Imagine that, a coin so ordinary, so unassuming, that most people never even glance at it, quietly hiding a fortune that could change a life forever. The story begins at the Denver Mint, in 1970. Millions of pennies rolled off the press every day, destined for wallets, vending machines, and cash registers. But among those millions, something extraordinary happened. A tiny error, almost imperceptible, was made during the minting process, a detail so subtle that it went unnoticed for decades. And yet, this small flaw would turn one penny into a treasure that collectors across the nation would hunt like a lost artifact. Collectors were shocked when the first 1970 D-era penny surfaced. It was during an auction that seemed routine at first, until the bidding skyrocketed. What should have sold for a few dollars ended up commanding tens of thousands. And soon, whispers began spreading across the coin community. Some of these pennies could be worth up to $1 million. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on any 1970 D penny in pristine condition, because the exact combination of minting error and preservation is what creates a once-in-a-lifetime coin. A retired schoolteacher from Ohio was cleaning out his drawer when he noticed something strange. Among the loose change, a penny gleamed differently. He picked it up, examined it, and realized the tiny D was misplaced, the rim slightly doubled. Could it be the fabled 1970 D mint mark penny collectors dreamed about? He had no idea that in his hand, he was holding a potential fortune, a coin that could sell for over $1 million. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle in a single moment. The secret of this coin isn't just its age or rarity. It's the details most people miss. The faint doubling of the letters, the subtle shift in the strike, the precise texture of the metal that reveals it wasn't just a penny. It was a minting anomaly, a historical accident preserved by chance. Every collector who has seen one knows the thrill, the shock, the disbelief. Because this isn't just collecting, this is uncovering history. Most of these pennies are hiding in plain sight. They look like ordinary change. People hand them to cashiers, drop them into jars, or leave them in drawers. Yet, just one moment of curiosity, a closer look at the mint mark, a magnifying glass, a careful inspection, can reveal a life-changing treasure. This coin has a story that could fill a book. Some were found in circulation, others preserved by accident. Auctions exploded when the first high-grade 1970 D penny sold for a shocking six-figure sum, igniting a frenzy. Collectors were lining up at shows, dealers combing through boxes of pennies, and suddenly, the hunt became real. But the most extraordinary finds didn't come from auctions. They came from people who didn't know the value of what they held. One man's jar of pennies became the centerpiece of a collection worth $1 million overnight. You have to understand, these coins are incredibly rare. Out of millions minted, only a tiny fraction display the exact error that transforms them into million-dollar treasures. And the condition matters. The slightest scratch, the tiniest imperfection, can drop its value dramatically. That's why collectors obsess over grading, over minute details, over photographic evidence of minting anomalies. But this isn't just about value. It's about history. It's about holding a piece of 1970, a moment frozen in time, with a hidden story that only a sharp eye can uncover. Every penny tells a tale, and this one's tale ends with wealth beyond imagination, a reminder that treasures often come from the most unexpected places. Even experts admit that the error is almost invisible to the untrained eye. Without a magnifying glass, without patience, without knowledge, it could easily be mistaken for an ordinary penny. Yet inside it lies the potential to turn a mundane day into a moment of legendary discovery. A coin pulled from circulation, unassuming, dull, almost forgotten. Once authenticated, it sold at auction for hundreds of thousands, the buyer willing to pay a small fortune for a coin that had once been lost among the change in someone's pocket. This is the story that inspires collectors to look closely, to sift through drawers, to question every penny they see. Because the right one could be worth more than a house. Now, let's talk about how to find this exact coin. First, you need to look at the mint mark, the D, on the reverse side. Examine it carefully under magnification. Look for doubling, misalignment, or any subtle irregularity in its shape. Then, check the date. The coin must be from 1970, and the copper should show a natural luster, not too worn, not too dull. Finally, inspect the rim and the surface. Tiny anomalies, scratches, or doubled edges could be the difference between an ordinary penny and $1 million masterpiece. Many people make mistakes by assuming condition doesn't matter. It does. A penny in perfect, uncirculated condition with the rare mint mark error is the ultimate prize. Even experienced collectors pass over ordinary pennies every day, unaware that the treasure of a lifetime could be lying in a jar right in front of them. Imagine it, a single coin in your hand, the same one that could fetch $1 million at auction, the same one that transforms ordinary change into a story of fortune, luck, and history. It's not a dream, it's real, and it has happened countless times to those lucky enough to recognize the signs. The next 1970 D penny you see could be the one. It might be in your wallet, your coin jar, your attic, or even your couch cushions. Take a moment to examine every coin, because the smallest detail could hide the largest fortune.